I'm speaking with Alan Bell, who's the Deputy Planning Director for the City of Los Angeles, and we're in his City Hall office. There's considerable concern about the core findings ordinance, which is scheduled to be heard before the Planning Commission on the January the 13th.
Yes.
I was wondering, you already know what those concerns are. The defense of the city, or so the argument by the city, is that the core findings are simply reducing excessive language to simplify codes, the municipal code, in order to make planning more expedient. And there are some concerns that that simplification is not as benign as it seems. I was wondering if you could address that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The purpose of the core findings ordinance is primarily to improve the way in which we analyze projects and to make sure that every project that goes before the planning department, that we look at the specific impacts of that project in a way that we're not able to do right now, because the language currently in the code is so ambiguous and so open to interpretation that it doesn't provide a solid basis for analyzing the impact of a project on a neighborhood. So we can simplify and at the same time strengthen the way in which we analyze projects. And we can provide the community with the reassurance that every project is going to be looked at in the same way, and we will be looking at the context of a project in a neighborhood, its height, its scale, its characteristics, to make sure that it is truly going to fit into a particular neighborhood. We are saddled right now with language left over from the 30s and the 40s, written by lawyers, and it doesn't provide the kind of specific language that we would need in order to be able to evaluate exactly how a project is going to fit into a neighborhood and provide specific benefits. So that's the intent, to enable us to provide a stronger way of analyzing a project and to make sure that projects are going to provide actual real community benefits. And so part of that is stripping away language that doesn't support that and keeping language that is crisp and clean and focused on what is most important. So we've had many workshops. We've explained the benefits of that, and I think that you will see on the 13th that there will people understand now the benefits of this particular set of language, that it actually enhances the ability of communities to make sure that projects are going to fit better within those particular neighborhoods. So I think it was simply a matter of sitting down and explaining to people how the new language is going to work and comparing and contrasting it to the old language. People have seen the benefits of that.
Mm-hmm. Regarding the CPI ordinance, which was the enabling ordinance that was passed on November 10th by City Hall, and some have said rather quietly, though there was one public meeting held on March 19th, 2009, which is about a year earlier, there are concerns that that enabling ordinance is also not as benign as it seems, and that it allows essentially the planning department to roll in and override existing community plans and possibly zones as well, and allows for all kinds of opportunities for upzoning. And was wondering if you could address those concerns.
Well, that's just not the case. When you look at the actual language of the ordinance, it's very clear. And what the ordinance very clearly states is that the ordinance, when looking at uses, when looking at height, when looking at bulk of buildings, when looking at signage, the ordinance requires that those CPIL regulations be more restrictive than the underlying zoning. The whole purpose of the CPIO ordinance is to create community-specific, neighborhood-specific standards that will raise the quality of development in that neighborhood and in that community. It cannot be used to increase the quantity of development. The whole purpose is to raise the bar and ensure that the quality of development is going to benefit the community. That's the purpose of the ordinance, and that is the intention that we will certainly use when partnering with the community to come up with very specific regulations in particular neighborhoods and particular communities. What we have seen is that the citywide standards are one size fits all, and that every community is unique, every neighborhood is unique, and they need their own tailored standards to make sure that development, when it comes in, is actually going to benefit that community and benefit that neighborhood, and that's what this ordinance does.
There's considerable talk, really, from the mayor's office and in other departments, that density is essential, more density is essential for the city, that it is coming and we have to prepare for it, and yet these ordinances, you're saying, are actually going to be more restrictive. So I'm wondering how you reconcile those two kinds of statements.
I agree that Los Angeles, based upon history, is probably going to continue to grow. We know that just natural population increase alone, the city is going to be bigger than it was in the past. And people are continuing to move to Los Angeles because it is such an attractive place to live. So the best way to accommodate that growth in a way that's going to have the least impact on existing neighborhoods is to plan for it. To plan for it in a way that's meaningful, that respects existing neighborhood contexts. And we think the best places to put new growth are in centers. We've had a policy for 50 years to direct new growth in many downtowns throughout the city, connected by transit. We think that this policy protects existing neighborhoods. It makes sure that existing single-family neighborhoods are not going to be the recipients of this growth, and it puts the growth where it can best be supported, and that is along commercial boulevards and across and near transit. One of the things that is very critical, and one of the ordinances that we would be working on, is how can we make sure when new growth meets up against existing development, how can we protect those existing neighborhoods, and what kind of standards do we need to make sure that we are going to mitigate those kinds of impacts. And so one of the key critical ordinances that we will be working on next year are ways to make sure that if there is new growth in Los Angeles, it can be accommodated in a way that will have the least impact on existing neighborhoods and will support development of these new centers in downtown and near transit in a way that will make them vibrant communities where people will want to live, which is where I live.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.